What's up, you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, back with another video. And of course, Nikon has announced that they will start production on the Nikon D6, which is the big daddy, the top of the line camera for Nikon, the best camera that they make that can do photos and pictures. And it retails for somewhere around $6,500. Usually the D5 did, and so there's no reason why the D6 won't. So it's gonna be somewhere around $6,500, and I don't think this camera's gonna do good. Along with the 1DX Mark III, I don't think these two cameras are going to be good. The 1DX Mark III will be the successor to the 1DX Mark II, the flagship for Canon. Now, Canon and Nikon are always neck and neck. They're always trying to combat each other because they're similar companies. Now, of course, Sony came out of the woodwork, and they're one of the newer companies, but they kind of took the DSLR market by storm, especially the full-frame mirrorless market. So these full-frame mirrorless marketed cameras, they give you exactly almost everything the bigger DSLRs give you. They give you high megapixels. They can give you 4K video. They can give you high frame rates. As a matter of fact, the A9 can give you way more frames a second than the 1DX Mark II and the D5. It gives you 20 frames a second. Never has Canon ever come out with a 20 frames a second camera in photos. Now, you could shoot video and then extrapolate the stills, but video is never as big as the DSLR photo picture, the stills, the modes that you use for stills. Can operate better than a live view shutter can sometimes in some cases, and it depends on how you're viewing the image, whether you're going to get the opportunity for that blackout or a better opportunity to take the image with the blackout. Now, with the mirrorless cameras, I've noticed that you don't even get blackouts for the A9. Now, for the DSLRs, the mirrored cameras, you get the blackout, which is the D5 and the 1DX Mark II. So you can't really see everything that you're shooting, even though you're shooting at 14 frames a second. You know how many times that mirror has to flip up and block your vision because the mirror is actually reflecting up into your eyepiece that you look into. And most people are actually going to be using the mirror to actually take sports pictures. They're not going to be using the live view. They're going to be using the mirrored optical viewfinder to actually get those pictures off because it operates faster and it's more reliable and it's easier to see focus points and change focus throughout this whole process. Now, the biggest claim to fame to these big hulking DSLRs, which will be the Nikon D6 and the 1DX Mark III, is the frames per second and the battery life. Of course, it has durability, but the 5D Mark IV has good durability. Of course, the 5D Mark IV has battery life, but it doesn't have that dual battery slot that the top of the lines will have, like the 1DX Mark III and the D6. And it also, those 5Ds and those lower end cameras like the D800 and stuff like that, they don't shoot extremely fast, 14 frames a second. They don't do that, and still provide you with a high megapixel RAW file or JPEG, depending on what you shoot. With all that being said, I think the A9 has really killed off Canon and Nikon's top-of-the-line flagship cameras. It really has killed off that scene because the A9 not only has done more frames a second than any flagship camera that Canon has ever come out with, but the A9 is pretty much future-proofing itself. I mean, it's so much better than all DSLRs. Now, one thing that the A9 has a drawback, in my opinion, from is the backlit optical viewfinder that you see a digital readout on. That can get a little bit laggy. I haven't used the camera itself, but most of all the mirrorless cameras that I've used, every time I look into that eyepiece for extended amounts of time, especially if I'm in a dark environment, it makes it harder on my eyes. So I wouldn't want to go with the A9 for that reason, but most of the time when I'm gonna be using the A9, if I have an A9 or ever be able to get an A9, I'll just be using it for sports. And even though I'll have the camera up to my face, I won't have it on for long extensive periods of time. So I'm just gonna say, really, the A9 has really killed off any chance of Nikon and Canon keeping up with their flagship DSLRs. And if they don't make these new flagship DSLRs, the D6 and the 1DX Mark III mirrorless, with all the goodies like 4K, maybe even 6K, all the big goodies, then they just won't be good. They won't be great, and this is probably noted to be the last 1DX that you'll see, and this probably will note it to be the last D5 you'll see, or the D6. That'll be the last flagship that they make, because it's just, if Sony ends up dropping the A9 Mark II, there's no reason to even buy a Canon or Nikon full frame flagship DSLR. It just doesn't make sense unless you are investing in those lenses. You might as well convert to Sony if you're looking for a flagship. But they're killing the full frame and flagship market with the A3, A7 III, and all the full frame cameras that they're coming out with. And don't get me started on the A7S III that they need to come out with. They will really destroy the game. I'm scared for Canon and Nikon because Sony is really killing it. I'm done with CenturyFX Studios, and stay tuned for the next video.